couldn't hear.
No,
Oli, all right?
yeah.
All right. Give me a standby.
Go.
Hello, everyone, and I should say good morning. Welcome here at the base of the San Fernando Hill on the Sung's Great Wall compound. All icons in the beautiful and magnificent city of San Fernando, and we're paying tribute this morning to James Lewa, former vice principal and principal of Naparima College, one of the great educators of not only the South, but indeed Trinidad and Tobago, because he was honored in the Excellence for Education program at the Ministry of Education. But today, and under, I think, the genius of another great San Fernandian and patriot, His Worship the Mayor Junior Agrello, we are going to name and honor James Lewa this morning because of the efforts he made, and I think it's back in the 1970s, but that would be clarified from the person who is speaking on behalf of the family. That's David Sammy. Mr. Lewa, James Lewa, was the one who decided that he was going to take everything he could find, block the road, and stop the illegal quarrying on the San Fernando Hill. Shortly after that, the plans came into being and into fruition of the park becoming a national structure, a national park. And the San Fernando Hill, of course, now stands as a place not only for filmmakers like myself and others, but it's a great recreation area for all the people of Trinidad and Tobago, because if there's one truly magnificent city with great character, it's that of San Fernando, and His Worship will be telling you more about that. The president of the Greater San Fernando Chamber of Commerce is here, Mr. Kiran Singh, and he's going to tell you a little bit more about how his organization honored James Lewa for his outstanding work to the city of San Fernando. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Kiran Singh on, the president of the Greater San Fernando Chamber of Commerce, to bring you greetings.
Good morning, thank you, Hansley, Master of Ceremonies, for this morning's brief event where we are honoring our own southern man, a south man of the soil of San Fernando, Mr. James Lewa. I had the very fortunate experience of meeting Mr. James Lewa in Naparima, where I was a young student, and he tutored me in English and so on. And I always thought he had a very calm demeanor, a very approachable personality, where students would go to him for advice. He always had a smile on his face, and he has passed on several years now, unfortunately. But he has left a legacy for us, which we in San Fernando must honor, we must pay respect to, for the work that he has contributed. He has given his life to the betterment of not only San Fernando, but when we look at the wider Trinidad and Tobago society with his drama and his activism, in fact, not only with San Fernando Hill, but he created the agenda for the Gulf City Bridge on the Link Road to be created so many years back. And I'm sure David Sammy will go more into details into the culture and activism of our son. We found that the San Fernando Chamber had to honor him. We awarded him back in 2019, just before the pandemic. We paid due regard, great respect to James Lewa for his contribution to arts, culture, theatre in San Fernando, and of course Trinidad and Tobago. The San Fernando Theatre Workshop, the drama group, and of course David will get more into detail with that. But as a chamber, we recognize individuals that contribute to the development of San Fernando, our second city, every year when we have our annual Christmas charity dinner. We honor different individuals in different aspects of societal contribution in business, education, health, culture, and the arts, of course. And we will continue to do so. And it was certainly a pleasure for me, it was an honor to meet Mr. James Lewa and to be able to relate to him. And I think he left a very long legacy, a very long lifespan of work that we all learn from as youths. We all fondly remember him. The Naps boys will tell you that as well. The little games we played, that will remain off camera for another time. But certainly, it was an honor for us to pay tribute to him. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kiran Singh, who is the president of the Greater San Fernando Chamber of Commerce. And of course, you heard him mention David Sammy. Now, David Sammy is a man who continued the legacy of James Lewa. Mr. Lewa started in the world of theatre, of course, from the Drama Guild, which initially was started by one of Trinidad and Tobago's greatest icons, Horace James, and a man who's known in the world of television and in the world of media and, of course, drama. He was the one who gave so many the start. Mr. Lewa took up the reins of the Drama Guild from Horace James, and of course went on to forge his own with the San Fernando Theatre Workshop and so much more. So James Lewa, you can safely say, has touched the lives of many, and our next speaker is just one of them who continues his legacy. He himself, of course, is a beloved of San Fernando, and you'll hear more from him. Let's welcome Mr. David Sammy to speak on behalf of Mr. James Lewa.
Mr. Master of Ceremonies, good morning. I was asked to say a few words on behalf of the family, so early this morning I contacted Kathleen Lewa, the eldest of the Lewa children who resides in the States, and she has given her blessing, and she's very happy that the city corporation is doing this, and she said to extend this to the mayor of San Fernando. So a lot of people know James Lewa as a teacher and an administrator at Naparima College for over 20 years. Others know him as a dramatist, as the MC has mentioned. But I'm here just to mention Mr. Lewa's name as a social activist and environmentalist. Long before that term was popular with politicians and beauty pageant contestants. So there was a problem with the quarrying of San Fernando Hill. In the dry season, the residents living around complained of the dust. In the rainy season, they complained of the sludge. So Mr. Lewa, being a man of action, he formed a group called the San Fernando City Citizens Action Committee in 1976. And they had about 6 or 7 things on their agenda, one of them being San Fernando Hill. He was able, along with Carl Mohan, who was his deputy at the time in that organization, he was able to get the quarrying stopped in 1977. I have a few lines from a poem written by Wayne Davis in 1976, who was so angry, as many other San Fernandians, and it's a long 2-page poem. I'll read 2 lines. He says, "But triggered by the relentless ticking and chiseling of greed, will keep on burrowing and burrowing into the bowels," meaning that the contractors and the powers that be did not care for what was being done. Fast forward many years later, on May the 7th, 1988, there was the inauguration of the rehabilitation of the hill, and it was led by a representative from the OAS, Mr. Huber, and along with the then Minister of Food and Forestry and the Environment, Mr. Lincoln Myers. And the person who was given the mandate from Forestry was Mr. Ronald Bikram, who was the Assistant Conservator of Forests. So at that time, Mr. Lewa was very happy that this was finally taking place so many years after 1977. And in it, in her speech, because Mrs. Lewa delivered the speech, she said these words. Again, a very long speech, I'll just give a few lines. She said, "The hill has begun to throb with life once more. They are rediscovering its beauty, the magnificent view. They have hope," they meaning the citizens, "that soon flowers will once more bloom in the desert that you see around you." Also at the time, a young pan man who had a young group called Skiffle Bunch was so moved by what was happening here that he wrote a piece called "In the Dream is the Dynamite," a saga of the San Fernando Hill. And that gentleman happens to be our present mayor. So again, with this short glimpse of James Lewa, I want to say thank you on behalf of the Liwa family for the recognition of the work that he did, not only to stop the quarrying, but to rehabilitate San Fernando Hill. Thank you.
Much, David Sammy, and of course you heard a lot there about Mr. Liwa. What is most important about this is that he made mention of that pan man who of course was inspired by it all, and of course that pan man not only went on to become the member of parliament, but he became the mayor. In addition to that, I think that this should be said. Here in San Fernando, we're living the dream of independence because we have been, this mayor has been moving forward, looking at our national heroes and indeed walking the talk. We've seen streets renamed, the Rash Shorty Eye Street, Leroy Caliste, Bobby Muhammad, Ken Julian, as we continue to honor our heroes throughout San Fernando. And for the first time, we're seeing this happening in earnest. So I'd like to welcome that extraordinary man. He's our mayor, and he's a beloved of San Fernando, Mayor Junior Regrello, to tell us more about this wonderful initiative for Mr. Liwa.
Thank you, Hansley, for that introduction. And may I take the opportunity to recognize in our presence the CEO of San Fernando City Corporation, his head of Crawford, David Sammy, who really recapped some history a while ago there, and of course, President of the Greatest San Fernando Chamber, Mr. Kiran Singh. Let us begin by saying that this street here that we are now leaving, James Liwa had no need. The procedure for naming a street requires a petition by residents, so as you know, there's no residents here. This is an easy fix for us, and we get very little, if any at all, opposition from persons in society. But more importantly, they would not oppose this because of the role that James would have played in development of the landscape of San Fernando. James has a very interesting history. James got a scholarship many years ago to study and went to Jamaica. Whereas it had been popular in those days to do medicine and law, James chose the arts and to be an educator. Came back from Jamaica very well qualified, but went into Napoleon College to teach. And so many persons would have benefited from his teaching and his commitment to the art. One name that comes to mind is Sullivan Walker, who went off to the United States and made it in Hollywood and made it in movies and on Broadway. And that's a product of James Liwa, and there's so many others. James' commitment to the arts is unspeakable, and it goes on and on and on. The formation of the San Fernando Arts Council is also instrumental and bear fruit from James' commitment and dedication to the arts. Many of us who know San Fernando well, could testify to James' contribution. And what stands out to us is his commitment for the restoration of San Fernando Hill and where it is today. We all know in 1980s or 1986 and 1988, he championed this cause, stood up sometimes by himself, blocking the streets, blocking tractors, blocking contractors, blocking transportation, people moving into the hill because he saw the good of this and stood for the cause. Today, that venue has been transformed to a leisure park, and all because of James Liwa. It's in this context that the city of San Fernando considered and decided to rename this street here, the James Liwa Boulevard. Actually, we don't call it a street, it should be a boulevard because of the significance of it. And if you were here last night, you've seen people here by the droves standing to look at the vantage point of the San Fernando Hill at the fireworks last night. So the family is not here today because his wife has since passed. She's also another standard bearer in San Fernando. His son lives abroad and his daughter is not able to hear because she's somewhat incapacitated. However, they're very proud and have accepted this decision made by the corporation, and very happy we have done that. So, to James Liwa, wherever you are, you displaying on us today that you have done something significantly. The city of San Fernando are very proud of you, and we're making this contribution today in honor of you and your need. Thank you so much. Something was raised by David a while ago that Skiffle had produced a piece called In the Dream is the Dynamite, the saga of the San Fernando Hill. That was in 1988 Steeman Festival, which we won. You should say that.
Well done. Well done. And because normally whenever we would go to Port of Spain, they will tell us if we won a title, we can't come back south. One would remember that, I think it was 1966 with Bobby Mohammed.
Yeah.
With Guinness Cavaliers.
Yeah.
And of course, when Fontclair beat Pan by storm, I declared that the Panorama title was coming to San Fernando. And of course, and the judges, I think it's by a point or
Half a point.
Half a point.
Keeps them by.
Professor Ken Fillmore and Fontclair, but we will continue to strive. Skiffle will help to keep the flag flying. Well, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. This is certainly a great day for me because Mr. Lewa, like Horace James, were very influential figures in my life, and to see this monument where I walk on weekends, and San Fernando Hill is still a great recreating area for those of us who want to stay healthy or just simply picnic. To Mayor Junior Regrello, I want to say thank you so much for walking the talks and showing the people in the country that independence truly means something. To David Sammy, representing the family, members of the family could not be here, and of course David representing them and carrying on the legacy for Mr. Lewa and the San Fernando Theatre Workshop, of which Avion Crooks, the chairman of the Naparima Bowl, is also vice chairman. And to Kiran Singh, our president of the Greater San Fernando Chamber of Commerce, who continues, like Mayor Junior Regrello, to do the good work for San Fernando. I'm Hansley Ojoda. Take care of yourselves. Do enjoy.
When?
Look up at the
Let's point the guys.
Yeah.
Good job.
Don't turn your back.
Yeah. Turn and point with your right hand, Kiran.
No, turn the other way and
Your right hand, not
Point
your
with
wrong
your right
hand.
hand. Right. Okay, good. Look at us.
Give it
Right.
point to.
Very nice, thanks.
Good news.